Howdy everybody, and welcome back to the Mega Man tutorial. So last time we set up a bat object and set it up so that it would spawn into our main room right here. But that bat object is a bit lonely, so we are going to be setting up a second enemy. Plus, we can't really interact with that bat, he just follows us around, so we're also going to set up the ability to shoot the bat as well. So let's get cracking. You'll notice that a bunch of code is already in here for our proposed new objects and stuff. That is because OBS decided it was going to self-destruct the video recording I did previously of this entire setup. So I got all the code and everything in here, and then no video apparently was recorded, even though it said it was recording video. So anyways, we'll start off by doing a damage check for the bat, because we're going to need this code for the bunny in a bit as well. So to get us started off, we set up a region damage check, and we need to check to see what state the bat is currently in. The bat can have two different states. Well, it have three states, but it has two important states. We have the roost state and then the other states. When the bat is roosting, e.g. is hanging from the ceiling and not doing anything, shots that hit the bat will bounce off and fly harmlessly off the screen, unable to interact with any other any other objects after that point. So how are we going to do this? We make a check, instance place, object, but okay, so I just want to make sure, say real quick here, this is probably not the best way to go about doing it. Well, see, again, in programming, there are a lot of ways to do a lot of different checks for different things, right? In this case, with the small project like what we got going here, this is just perfectly fine and work great for everything that's going to happen. But if you had like 500 bats on the screen at one time, this would not be the best method for checking if the bullet hits the bat, because this would have 500 instances of the bat flapping around the screen, all checking every single frame to see, oh, have I touched a buster shot? So in that case, you would probably want to do the checks over in the buster shot object. Therefore, you would only have, as we know, 3 buster shots on the screen at any one time. So there would be less checks going on in that case. Anyways, so it's just completely a arbitrary thing that might or might not make a difference for your project that I wanted to touch on real quick there. But as I said, we are checking to see if we have touched a buster shot each frame. If ID does not equal no one, so if we did touch something and there's a buster shot was detected, then we're going to play the dink audio sound. That little guy. And with the bullet, we're going to change its direction facing around, change its X speed around, change its Y speed to -2, that way it flies off at an upward angle, and set the mask index to sprite false mask. Why we're doing that is because sprite false mask is a 1 pixel picture that doesn't generate a hitbox because it's just 1 pixel. So it won't interact with anything else after being sent off to who knows where. Another thing I should mention is, in this case, it will check for 1 bullet per frame. So if you fire 3 bullets at an object and they all pretty much reach the, well, depending on how things would work, like there's the wind shot that can fire 3 bullets at the same time. So you can end up with 3 shots hitting the enemy all at the same time. In this case, it would end up only registering 1 of those 3 bullets each frame, so you'd end up with 3 frames of the bullets hitting the enemy object. If you want them all to hit in the same frame, you would use instance place list and then wrap through the list to see how many bullets hit and then register each one of the hits at the same time. Okay, so if we are not in the roost state though, then do the same thing, and this little bit here about if the audio isn't playing sounds enemy damage. That little sound. The reason why I have this here is because in the NES game, the NES only had like 8 audio channels, I believe. So if you had, so it would only let one instance of the enemy damage sound play at a time. So you could shoot an enemy multiple times, but it would only make the hit sound once until it reached the end of the audio clip or whatever the loopback point they set for it was. Instance destroy ID, so destroy the bullet that hit the enemy and create a explosion effect. So we're going to create a new object here, and just for reference, over here we're going to create a new supergroup called effects, and we're going to make it in there and call it object single explosion effect. Give this a sprite from effects, sprite destruction flash, and on animation end, destroy the object. It's just there to show the sprite effect. That's all it does. That would be something that would actually, in the upcoming future update, that would include lightweight objects. That would be relegated to being a lightweight object rather than actually doing a full-on object. But I digress, as I usually do. And destroy the bat. The bat only has 1 HP, and in fact we don't even bother setting the HP over in the create event because it just has 1, and anything that hits it will destroy it. So just instance destroy at that point. So that allows us to shoot the bat. And let's see, anything else I need to do in this? I don't think we do. So we can just step up to our next object here. We are going to create a bunny. So to start us off, we're going to create a spawner. Just like the bat spawner, you could probably just copy and paste the object, really, if you wanted to. In the create event, instance equals no one. And in the step event, again, all the code with the checking to see if we're in the rectangle. And if we don't have a spawned instance, then create a bunny. Otherwise, set our instance to no one so that we can spawn a new bunny when we next appear in the screen. We also have instance underscore create underscore layer. We set y equal y minus 1. Why do we do that? Because the bunny object, its origin is 1 pixel above the bottom of the sprite. That way it will appear to have the base of the feet sunk into the ground by 1 pixel. And in order to make sure, so when we drag the spawn object into the room, it's going to be sunk into the ground by 1 pixel, just because of the way snapping works for the room grid. If you wanted to manually position and put the spawner right there, you wouldn't have to do the y minus 1. But since I'm lazy and don't want to be doing that for everything, I just set it to y minus 1. So that works fairly well for us. This will go a lot faster than it did the first time I did it, since I got all the talking out of the way. Secondly, we have this object to carrot. This is a projectile object that the rabbit is able to shoot at the player. Give it a parent enemy projectile. You'll have to create this parent as well, and it's basically just a copy of the projectile, the parent projectile. except it just has enemy projectiles, so we can differentiate between your own projectiles and stuff that enemies shoot at you. I mainly did this because I was able to kill myself with my own bullets until I put in a separate enemy projectile for checking for hits from enemies, rather than checking for hits from every single projectile. Set it to have a damage equal to 2, and of course it inherits the instance destroy when it goes outside of the view. Alright, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the bunny. The bunny is going to copy and paste all of the code again. Yay! Isn't copy and pasting fun? Makes it so much easier. So instead of the bat states, we have bunny states. The bunny can either be shooting or jumping. And we set the damage actually equal to 4 and HP underscore equal to 6. And everything else should be about the same. And of course our sprite lookup table, we set up our 2 different states and set it to have sprite rabbit hopping. Step event. Oh yeah, I completely forgot to mention the loot table. I'll get into that in a second here. So we're going to copy and paste the damage check from the bat, except instead of instance destroying, we do HP minus equal underscore ID dot damage. So we'll take whatever damage the bullet will be giving out. And if the HP is less than or equal to 0, then we instance destroy rather than just instance destroying offhand. We need to create the explosion effect, again at y minus 8. And the loot table, it's something that we're going to get more into later on, but Control Shift K so you can see the color coding better. We use a chance script. It just returns true if the random value that if the percent value that you give it is less than the generated value. So in this case we have a 1% chance of an extra life and a 10% chance of a large HP or large ammo and a 20% chance of a small HP or a small ammo. You'll note that I do this in reverse order, so smallest to largest, and I also account for my previous chances in there as well. So it'll make sure that you actually get a 20% chance on top of everything. Alright, and then that we create on instances, we create pickup objects. But we'll get into the pickup objects in a little bit. Well, next episode maybe. Or in a future episode somewhere. I think in one of the next episodes I'm going to talk more about the transition effect, maybe. One of the favorite things that a lot of people want to know about. So anyways, and our state execution is exactly the same as in the bat. Make sure you set bunny states.shoot as our starting. Oh, and make sure you set the animation timer equal to sec times 0.95. The very importance of this very specific number will be explained in a second. In the shoot state, we have our image index set to 2. Our image speed is set to 0, just an FYI. And let me see if I can... So in this case, that would just be the bunny standing there doing nothing. Interesting. That would be what sprite we're set to. Animation timer minus. And if instance exists object player, make sure you do that before you try to reference the player object in something. Then set my image x scale equal to x minus the object player dot x. So that'll give me the sign of that, which will be 1 or -1. It can also be 0 as well. And I didn't account for that. So if you want, make sure you account for the very rare case where the player and the bunny will be in the same position, but that should not happen very, very often. So, because typically the player will be damaged if he's in the same position as the bunny. And shoot. If animation timer is greater than or equal to sec times 1. So when we're in the jump state, when we return to the animation state, we set the animation timer to sec times 3.95. This will let us create a bullet every second if animation timer mod sec is equal to 0. So every time the timer reaches a multiple of a second, then you'll create a bullet, a carrot. And if the instance exists object player, then create a bullet, a carrot on the instance layer, give it a speed of 2 and a direction of point direction towards object player. So that will be a very simple bullet that just travels along towards the player object, doesn't collide with anything, it'll just pass through and then off the screen where it will be automatically deleted because it inherits the enemy projectile. Of course, remember, make sure your object bunny also has the enemy parent as well. And we also have oh yeah, states. So now that we're shooting, once the animation timer is less than or equal to 0, then set our image index equal to 1, which is the bunny starting to jump from the ground. So you see him getting ready to jump. And set the state equal to the jump, set on ground equal to false, and y underscore speed equal to jump speed. Just like the player when he jumps. You get a lot of mileage with the code in a lot of this stuff because we're able to reuse it across different states and different objects. So that's something that's really nice, actually. Back to the jump state. Once we're back on the ground, of course, set us back to the shoot state, set the animation timer to sec times 3.95, and execute the state. Acceleration, x speed is equal to the max, is our max speed times the image x scale. Make sure that it's the negative image x scale because it depends on what direction the object is currently facing, and apparently the best way to get that to set up was the negative image x scale. I could get rid of that negative by changing max speed to a -2, but oh well. And apply gravity as per normal by the player object. Speed fractions are the same as normal. Collision and movement are the same as normal. And the animation is actually a little bit more freaky here. So we have 2 pixels that we're checking. And this is in the center of the picture, so right there at the bottom. We're checking +1 to see if there is a ground directly underneath us for the on ground check, as seen right there. But more importantly, we're also checking to see if ground is still within 16 pixels of us, because if the ground is still within 16 pixels of us, then keep us on that image index 1 of the bunny starting to hop, which also doubles as a bunny about to land image as well. But if we are in midair, then set us to image index 0, which is the bunny in midair picture. Alright, so all that should be everything we need to get this running. So let's give it a check. Of course I know it works because I've already done it. Uh-oh. Bunny's coming for us. And he's gone. Oh, he's shooting at us. And he's dead. Great. Perfect. Now, I had somebody mention something about the running sprites seem to be messed up. I'm not really noticing anything messed up with the running sprite. He's looping through as he goes through, so I don't know. If it's messed up, it might be something on your end then. Sorry about that. Alright, so now that all works, we are currently at 20 minutes, so I saved 2 minutes on the second run through of this project. So thank you everybody for joining me. I think it's time for me to read some Patreon sponsors. I'd like to thank Fragile Hearts, Kuru Patreon, Damien, Kenneth Klein, John Dickey, and Vladimir Soldatov for their support of the NES GameMaker. We couldn't run without Patreons like you. So if you have a question or a comment, don't forget to leave it in the comment section of the video, or join me on the Discord and leave your questions there as well. I love to help, and I'll try to respond as best as I can. And until next time, good luck with your programming.